Good morning. My time, very good. Give me a check today.
Okay, we're on the bottom of New Testament base. Omar of Murray. So we had the Mishnah that had different levels of severity of Tahara, and it started Chulin, and then Meiser maybe, Truma, Kodesh, Chatas, and something that's considered Torah on the lower level is considered Tamei on the higher level. Amar of Mari Shmami no Chulin Shnas Al Tas Kodesh Kodesh Dami. Someplace from the Mishnah you could infer that Chulin. There's a new concept called Chulin Shnas Al Tas Kodesh. We know that there's Chulin, Meiser, Truma, Kodesh. There's such expression Al Tas Kodesh. Nowadays people use it for when they want to say something is very holy. They say Al Tas Kodesh. That means that it's on a high level of Tara, the level of Kodesh. But here it says Chulin Shnas Al Tas Kodesh. That means that Chulin has its laws, Truma has its laws, Kodesh has its laws, but a person decided he's going to treat the Chulin as if it was Kodesh. So to us it would sound like it's just his own business. He wants to do practice, something like that. So he's going to take something which is not so holy and treat it as if it's very holy. But in the Gemara it comes out that it actually takes an effect. It could be that it takes an effect that if someone treats Chulin on the level of Kodesh, it gets the halachas of Kodesh. It means not that it becomes holy, but it's vulnerable to the same level of Tumah that Kodesh would be vulnerable to. Which would mean, for instance, Chulin could only become a Sheni, Truma could become even a Shlishi, Kodesh could become a Revi. If someone treats Chulin on Tasa Kodesh, it could be that it's vulnerable to become a Revi, and then it really is going to become Tameh. It really becomes, that's the concept called that if Chulin Shnas Al Tasa Kodesh Ki Kodesh. The Gemara is going to say right away that it's not so simple. There's a Madama that says that nothing takes effect, it's like regular Chulin. Others say that it gets a level of Truma, and he wants to prove, Rabbi wants to prove that our Mishnah holds that it gets the level of Kodesh. Again, it doesn't mean that it becomes holy. It means that it has the same halachas as the holiness, and it'll become vulnerable to a tumah that Kodesh will become vulnerable to. And somehow he derives it from our Mishnah. How do you see it in our Mishnah? Yimai. From where do you see in our Mishnah that Chulin Shnas Al Tas Kodesh has the same halachas as Kodesh? Do you think the reason is Chaf Dafaf Aleph Midelo Katani Behu Maila? Do you think the reason is the diak because it doesn't say such a level? Means the Mishnah says all kinds of levels. It says Chulin and the Meiser and Truma and Kodesh. It doesn't say Chulin Shnas Al Tas Kodesh. It's not going to be the diak just because it doesn't say a separate level on its own. That doesn't make sense. That wouldn't be a raya. Whatever level it is. It's possible that it's Chulin, it's possible that it's Truma, possible that it's Kodesh. The Mishnah tells you all the different levels, and now you want to know what halacha does Chulin Shnas Al Tas Kodesh. That's not the subject of the Mishnah. Whatever it is, it is. So there's no diak yet. What does the Gemara mean to say? Where in the Mishnah could you infer that if the Chulin Shnas Al Tas Kodesh has a level of Kodesh? It doesn't say anything. It just tells you the levels of Chulin and Truma and Kodesh and put it in wherever it's supposed to be. The Tanya Chulin Shnas Al Tas Kodesh Ve'en Chulin. We have machlokas with different opinions. So whatever you hold it is, it might be, and you don't have any diak in our Mishnah. Elami Seifa. So now the Gemara is coming to explain what the diak was. The diak was from the next part of the Mishnah. It brings down the two stories. The Gemara really means the second story. It says Yosef ben Yezai Chassid Shebekuna Vaysim Etpachta Medus LaKodesh. The Mishnah wants to dramatize to show you the case of that even somebody that's very makbid on Truma, but as far as Kodesh goes, he's considered Tameh. We brought a story about Yosef ben Yezai that he was Chassid Shebekuna, but still his garment would be considered medris, a tumah chamura, as far as Kodesh goes. That's what we said, that medris, that big day, ochle, truma is medris l'kodesh. That's one story. Second story was Yochanan ben Gudgadaya ochel al tarsa kodesh. That doesn't mean he ate kodesh. It means he ate al tarsa kodesh. Al tarsa kodesh means that he ate chulin al tarsa kodesh, and it called yamav. He always used to eat everything chulin that he ate. He ate with the same hit. He considered it as if it would be Kodesh. That even though he was so careful about Tahara, but since he only did it al Tarasa Kodesh, so if his garment would have touched something, it would have been considered a medrus as far as Paraduma goes. That's what the Mishnah says. Al Kapanim, what do you see? That it only says that it's Tamei L'chatas. L'chatas in L'kodesh lo. If you hold that Chulin Shnas Al Tas Kodesh is only Chulin or Truma, so then it also should have been made Kodesh Tamei. If you had such a kind of item that was Chulin Shnas Al Tas Kodesh and it touched something of a Kodesh, if Chulin Shnas Al Tas Kodesh is not Kodesh, so then it should also make the Kodesh Tamei. we always say there's something on a lower level and make something on a higher level tummy. So if you say chulin shenas taras hakodesh, it's not kekodesh dummy, so it should be considered only chulin or truma, and if it touched the kodesh, it should have made a tummy. The Mishnah doesn't say that. The Mishnah says that chulin shenas taras hakodesh will be considered tummy as far as chatas goes, as far as paraduma. It means it's giving it the same level as kodesh mamish. Alma kosava chulin shenas taras hakodesh kekodesh damu. End of the sugya. So we're going to have more about it when we get into the sugyas about chulin shenas taras hakodesh. But here it says in our Mishnah, you do see such an opinion. It comes out there are three opinions. We had a brayso before that some say chulin shenas taras hakodesh is nothing. A rein kechulin is like regular chulin. So Rab Tzadok said that it's like truma, and I have a right from our Mishnah that he holds that it's kodesh. And we'll leave it as far as the halacha goes. We'll leave it meanwhile. But there are three opinions of Tanoim what level chulin shenas taras hakodesh is. Just to say it over again, one small thing that we would have thought that chulin shenas taras hakodesh is nothing. You want to have your own chumrah. You'll take. I just gave an example. You'll take a regular sefer, and you're going to give it. You're going to treat it as if it's a sefer Torah. Very nice. Do what you want, but it doesn't make it a sefer Torah. It doesn't get any kind of halachas. But by Taras, there's something special about it. That it could be that when you treat chulin on the same level of kodesh, not that it becomes kodesh, but maybe it gets the same vulnerability. They said that truma only becomes a sheni, truma could become a shlishi, kodesh could become a revi. It could be that chulin shenas taras hakodesh, if you treat it like kodesh, could be for some reason Chazal made it effective, made it real, that it really becomes vulnerable to tumah that it wouldn't have been vulnerable to otherwise. And Agamor comes out that there are three opinions. Some say that it's nothing taka, some say it's mamish like kodesh, and some say it's in between. They made it like truma. And end of the sugya.
Reminds me of the person that makes a statement that I wanted to reach a certain level. And how did he say it? He says, I promised. He said we did something, and then they say, yeah, okay, now you chayiv on what you said you.
That's a neder. Someone can make a neder.
Right.
I don't know if this is there. I don't know if this is called a neder or it really actually becomes tummy.
Maybe it was it.
The neder would just mean that's the give him. He has to chew. He has to do
makes
that.
a level for himself.
You see,
So that becomes then a din on him that he has to makan.
yes, okay, but
So
I don't know.
also
But that's- I don't think so. He didn't make it kodesh. He didn't say that. If he says that, he just treats it. He treats it as if he treats it as if with the same halachas as if it's kodesh. Chulin shenas taras hakodesh. It doesn't make the kodesh. If we say I raise a kodesh, then it will be kodesh. He didn't say it's kodesh. He didn't make it hekdesh. Or kodesh means even a korban. He didn't make it into a
What did
korban.
he do to make it so?
He's
so what
treating
did he
it
do?
with the same seriousness
He treated it.
as if it will be kodesh. I would have thought that it's just practice. He wants to make sure that he gets used to kodesh, so he does all the halachas as if it's kodesh, but it's nothing. It's not real. But the Gemara says it might have some reality to it that it really becomes vulnerable to the tumah that kodesh will become. That's the end of that sugya. Now we start a new sugya. And the Gemara is going to say three statements, three halachas. Then the Gemara is going to deal with them later on. So I just colored them different colors for the three statements. The first one is Rabbi Yonasan ben Elazar. Second one is Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram. The third one is Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok. Each one very, very interesting halachas. Rabbi Yonasan ben Elazar. Nafla ma'afarto imenu. Amal haveiro tenali v'nosnalo tmeya. You have two people. They're different. That we say is Amoritz and a Chaver. We said on the Mishnah such a thing as Tumas Amoritz, Medrus, Big Amoritz, such thing as Amoritz. And he doesn't know the halachas of Tumah V'Tara, so we consider him a Medrus. It probably also has to do with different levels also of Ochle Truma and Ochle Chulin. Everything, there's a level of Tumah. Here you have two people. Somebody, Ruvain, dropped his scarf, Ma'aforest, some kind of a beggar, the Suda, and he asked his friend, can you please pick it up for me? And he did.
The blue is what?
There are three statements over here.
Three
Rabbi Yonasan ben Elazar, Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram. They're not going to argue on each other, but each one says a separate thing. We're just going to let's call it because it'll be easier to follow the three. So Rabbi Yonasan ben Elazar says if somebody, a chaver, he's a Talmud Chacham, he knows halachas of Tumah V'Tara, he's makpid, parush, and he dropped his scarf. His scarf fell off, and he asked his friend, "Please pick it up." And the friend picked it up, and he gave it to him. And both of them are tahor. The scarf becomes tummy. Miracle. What happened? Makara. Next one. Amr ben Amram. He took his jacket from the hanger. He took off his jacket, took a jacket, and then he realized he's wearing a Shabbos jacket. This is a Shabbos jacket. He doesn't want this. He wears in weekday has a weekday jacket. There's a Shabbos jacket.
Mm-hmm.
He took his Shabbos sleep by mistake, and then middle of the day he sees that it's his Shabbos jacket. Comes tummy. Makara also miracle number 2. Third one. There were two women, both of them were chaverot. Chaverot means the feminine of a chavira, that they know the halachos of tumah, like their husbands are chavirim. So they're right. So they're not amei haaretz, and they are tahor. And they went to the merchos. They went to the base of merchos, and they switched by mistake. They took each other's clothing. So Rachel got Leah's clothing. Leah got Rachel's clothing. And both of them are chavirot. Both of them come out that they find out who's who. Everyone's tahor. All said of begodim matami. 3 for 3. We don't know what's happening.
Why do you say dafka? Why not men?
No, it could have been men also. Why does the Taka say such an example? I don't know. It says Maisa. That was the story.
Nice. Okay.
Okay, but the halacha will be men also. So those are the 3 halachas. So we don't know what's happening. Why should it be tummy? Everyone's chaverim. Everyone should be tahor. They're all makbid on tahor. What's the problem? So that's what going to be the Gemara talks about. First, the Gemara tries to on the second and third. The second and third cases, maybe it's because there's some halacha that you have to know what you are watching. You're watching it that it should be tahor. Maybe there's such a concept that you have to know what you're watching. And if you thought that it's a weekday clothing, really it's Shabbos clothing. So for some reason, for no reason at all, there's some kind of a low plug that you have to know what you're watching. And if you don't know what you're guarding, maybe it's tummy. That would explain the second and third case. It wouldn't explain the first case. The first case anyway wouldn't be explained. But maybe the second and third case we explain if there'd be such a new rule that you have to know what you're watching, what you're guarding. And if you don't know what it is, for some reason they made it tummy. But the Gemara is going to say that can't be. Why should that be? Also, if you're going to say it's such a kind of new concept that you have to know what you're guarding, and if you don't know what it is, so it becomes tummy. It's not a good guarding. So if somebody put his hand into the bread basket and he wanted to take wheat bread and he took a barley bread, you can say that's tummy because he got the wrong thing and he didn't know what he's guarding it. He's tahor. Everything is tahor. What's the problem if he didn't know what it was? You might be persistent and try to say there is such halacha that over there also you have to know what you're guarding. And if you don't know what you're guarding, it becomes tamei. I'll show you that it's not true. If you're guarding a barrel, you thought that it's a barrel of wine, and you're guarding it that it shouldn't become tamei, and it comes out that it wasn't wine, it was really oil, it is tahor. So you see that you don't have to know what you're guarding in order to be a good guarding. And therefore, by the barley and the wheat, or the cases we said before, the Shabbos clothing and the weekday clothing, or each woman that you thought she has her garment, she has somebody else's garment, it shouldn't make a difference if you know that you're tahor and you're guarding it. So what's the difference if you didn't know what it was? The Gemara here, yes. Tumah means that it's tahor, that it doesn't give off tumah to something else. You're right. That is a little strange that it says tahor l'tamei. So we'll read the next words. It says tahor. Maybe I should underline this or something, highlight it. Just what am I doing here? The wrong one. Okay. Tahara l'tamei. And also it says asur milacho. That's really what the Brisa says. The Brisa says Hamishamer es hachavis. One more over here also. Hamishamer es hachavis b'cheska shel yain v'nim say shel Hashem v'torah l'tamei basur milacho. That's really what the Brisa says. So the Gemara has problem to explain the Brisa, and it'll take this parentheses over here, about 10 lines from here to here, to explain what the Brisa means. We're going to get back to where we started. We're going to get back to the point that even if you don't know what you're guarding, you're guarding it. I want to watch. I'm tahor. I'm watching that it should become tahor, that it should stay tahor. And no difference if it's wine or oil does make a difference. But in between, there was difficulty with the wording of the Brisa, and it'll take about 10 lines to figure it out. But we're going to come back to the same point that you don't have to know what you're guarding, and therefore it's going to be a kasha back on before. You don't have to know what you're guarding. You don't have to know what it is. Wine, oil, you made a mistake. Or the same cases before, the barley and the wheat, and back to our cases about the big day Shabbos, big day Chol, or the 2 women that they thought it was her garment, it was the other one's garment. There's no such halacha. So the Gemara is going to have to figure out what's the problem with these things, these 3 cases, why they tell me. But the Gemara first has to figure out this Brisa. The Brisa does say a strange lashon. It says if you're guarding a barrel, assuming that it's yayin, the wine, and really it comes out that it's shemen, it's tamei l'tamei, but it does say that you're not allowed to eat it. Ultamech, if you think that there's no concern, if you know what you're guarding, why does the Brisa continue to say that you're not allowed to eat it? Why should that be? Why should it be us to eat? If you guarding was a good guarding, it's tahor. The case would be that he was guarding it, partial guarding. He was watching that this thing, whatever, no difference really if it's wine or shemen or he knew what it is. It's a little dochak over here. They talk about it, but let's say that the side point is that he happened to have him guarding it, that it shouldn't become tamei from a big tumah, but he wasn't guarding it that it shouldn't become on a small tumor. Means, let's say this thing would be, just for argument's sake, let's say what it would be, a sheni. So a sheni, let's say this truma. Let's say this is truma. So truma can become a shlishi. So it's Torah Latame means that he guarded it, that it shouldn't have become in contact with a sheni, which would have made it in. I'm sorry. He guarded it from something which would be a big tumor, which could have made it into a tame. He guarded it from a sheni, that it shouldn't become. Maybe I'm getting something wrong over here.
Rishon. You got
Yes.
from the Rishon, so it shouldn't become a.
He guarded it from a that it shouldn't become a sheni.
Yeah.
That'll be able to make a shlishi and a revi, but he didn't guard it from, let's say, a sheni, which would have made it a shlishi. So it means that such a thing, the Gemara is introducing a new concept that you could guard something with a partial intention. I didn't find a good example. I didn't find an example that I'm looking for. That there's something that there's sometimes that you're looking at something, you're guarding it for something, but you only have a big concern. You don't have a small concern for some reason. And even if you're going to watch, you're watching it, you're only going to see what you're looking for. It's the concept the Gemara says. If something is not your concern, so you don't pay attention to it, even though you're looking at this thing, but you're only looking at it for what you're interested in. So you see that, and you don't see something else. So you guarded it that it shouldn't have become tameh from a big level tumah, but you didn't guard it from something which make it a small level tumah. So it could become that it could be that it became a small level tumah, which means a surah malechel. This truma, let's say it could be that it became a shlishi because it came in contact with a sheni. You weren't guarding it. You weren't conscious of guarding it from a sheni, but you were conscious that it shouldn't have contact with a rishon, which was made it a sheni, which then could go on to make something else a shlishi also. So to answer the Bryce, he says that that you guarded it for one purpose, you didn't guard it for another purpose, and therefore whatever you guarded it for, it is a good guarding. It means Torah means if you guarded it that it shouldn't come in contact with a rishon, you did a good job. You didn't guard it that it shouldn't have contact with the sheni. So fine, you didn't guard it for that, you didn't guard it for that. But whatever you did guard it for, you did guard it for. And that comes back to our Yisod, that we want to prove that whatever you did guard it, even though you didn't know what it was, you thought it was wine, really, it was Shem, it doesn't make a difference. The Gemara is impressed that there is such a thing. Is there such a thing that you could guard it, and whatever you see whatever you, and whatever you didn't guard it for, you didn't guard it for? Is there such a thing as a half watching? Yes, the Gemara says yes. By the time you learned in a brisa, the Gemara is going to bring a brisa that says such a thing. It doesn't say it openly, but after the Gemara asks questions, the Gemara is going to figure out that that's what it says. Also, it's included in what it says. They take out the word hoshit over here. Basal al ksefo. Someone had the other basal also is a little difficult. His hand was in the sal, but the point is that he had a basket on his shoulder. There was some kind of a shovel that was inside the basket.
He had his
He had a basket on his shoulder. Yes.
Where's the word shoulder?
Ksefo. The last one on the line.
Oh,
You can take out the word hoshidada basal. You can take out those words more or less. The post Hasal al ksefo. There's a basket on his shoulder. There's some kind of a shovel in the basket. Rashi says this basket, as the Gemara is going to talk about, that it was really made for food. And Rashi says that the case was that they had a magret for some kind of a shovel that was also used in the process of the figs. When you had figs, you wanted to dry it, you wanted to cut them out, you wanted to press them together. There's such a thing called a magrefa. So he has a basket, and also the figs are inside the basket. Also, there's a magrefa, this kind of shovel that's also inside the basket, and he was guarding one thing and not the other thing. He was concentrating, he was intending to guard that the basket shouldn't become tameh, but he was not intending that the magrefa shouldn't become tameh. This is not a chiddush to the Gemara that you can watch one thing and not the other thing. That's not a chiddush of calling on the tibus of the palga. That's not called that I'm half guarding it. One thing I'm guarding, one thing I'm not. So asal tor, but magrefa tameya. The basket is tor because you were guarding it that it shouldn't become tameh. But the magrefa, since you didn't have your mind on it, so it's tameh because you didn't mean to guard it. That's no chiddush. That doesn't show us anything yet. The Gemara, that's the end of the brisa. The Gemara has some few questions on the brisa that we still didn't get to our point. Hasal tor, why is this basket tor? Titami magrefa lasal. If the magrefa became tamei, so by touching, since it has contact with why doesn't it put further? Why doesn't the magrefa, which was a rishon, why doesn't it become a rishon?
Fake.
Why is this fake? Is over here?
Because it might
as much tummy
Because
as the magrefa is, so is the,
magrefa would maybe have come tamei.
as much tummy as it became, so did the basket. If it automatically is touching it, so as much tummy as the magrefa is, it should make the next one tummy also.
Is it
If it would be a rishon.
enough to touch the outside of the basket with the magrefa, or does it have to touch the inside?
It's inside, and we're not going into all the
it's inside.
details right now. And the Gemara thinks that if we touch it, that it automatically will make it tamei. Let's say the magrefa would be a rishon. The Gemara is asking, let the basket become a sheni. The Gemara says there's no such thing. Ain't clean and tamei kli. Basket doesn't become a sheni. And the lachas of Tumah doesn't go so far. Food becomes a sheni, a kli doesn't become a sheni. It can become a rishon if the magrefa would be an abatuma, but we're not choshish that the magrefa is going to become abatuma. It's not going to become from a tamei maze. But anyway, the magrefa is going to be tamei because he didn't watch it, and the basket is tahor because he did watch it, and the magrefa doesn't affect the
Why?
basket.
Because the basket doesn't go down.
It doesn't become a sheni. A kli doesn't become a sheni. Only on a certain instances that something, but let's leave it just, that's not really our subject right now. But the Gemara is a kasha, how come all the figs don't become tamei? Well, the tamei masha basal. That's what the Gemara wants to really bring out of this whole thing of the sal and the magrefa. How come the figs that are inside don't become tamei? Ravina, yes, good.
We'd have to become wet before they can.
So the Gemara assumes that they're wet. Good point. But I don't even see that it says anything about the figs in the first place. But the Gemara assumes that it says here that the figs are not affected, even if they are vulnerable to tumah. Why not? If the magrefa is touching them, they also should become tamei. Even though it says that he didn't watch it, he didn't watch the magrefa, he did watch it partially. It must be that he watched it partially, that it shouldn't be so tamei that it should be able to puzzle the figs. It means that he at most the problem was only that it might have become a shlishi, but not that it become a sheni in a way that it could have affected the figs. This Gemara was a side point just to show that it's possible to guard something on a certain level and you're not guarding it on a different level.
So again, what happened to the figs? How come
They didn't become tamei because he's sure that the magrefa didn't become the level that it could be tamei the figs. Let's say the fig surely, the magrefa surely didn't become a sheni. It didn't even become, no, now we're talking about the food, not about the basket. The food could become a shlishi. If it's truma, so the food could become a shlishi, and it has to not have contact with a sheni. So all this is very difficult. A lot of the points here because Kayla becoming a sheni, a shlishi, these things don't really usually happen. So you have to find the case for each one. But the point is to say that he watched them, even though it says he did not watch the magrefa, he did not watch it that it should become to a level that it can puzzle the food. So he did watch that it shouldn't become a sheni because if it would be a sheni, it will be able to make the figs into a shlishi. And it says the figs are not a problem. It must be that he just watched that the magrefa shouldn't become a shlishi. All these words I'm saying don't really make sense because the kli become a sheni and a shlishi. Usually these things don't make sense. But we'll put it on the side and we'll say that he washed it partially, that it shouldn't become a big tumah, became a small tumah he didn't wash it for. That's all the Gemara wants. And back to the thing before, the brisa that Aga, besides saying that washing a barrel of wine, that it really turns out that it's oil, it's okay. Talking about the time, it means whatever he did wash it for is considered a good guarding. Aga, it says that if he didn't wash it, if he didn't guard it for something, he didn't guard it for a lower tumah, it's okay. He didn't guard it for that. Whatever he did guard, and that the Gemara calls the tivus l'palga. There is such a thing as guarding something partially, fine. But our main concern is to learn out of this brisa that even though you didn't know what it was, that doesn't affect your guarding. If you thought that it's wine, really it's oil, it doesn't make a difference. You guard it, it's okay. And therefore, we'll come back to the kasha that these three cases, we still don't have any pshat in them. The first one, we didn't have any pshat yet to explain, but the second and the third, we considered maybe the possibility, if you don't know what you're guarding, like you think that it's a Shabbos winter clothing, really a Shabbos clothing, or you thought that it's your garment, somebody else's garment, maybe that's the reason why it should become tamei. But the Gemara says that it's not true, as we've proved that you don't have to know what you're guarding. In the case of wine and oil, of course, what he didn't guard it for, he didn't guard it for. But what you did guard it for, you did guard it for, and it's considered good, Torah l'tamei, and therefore that's the Gemara's kasha. Why is there a concern that you didn't know that it was big day chol, or you didn't know that it was somebody else's garment? What's the difference? If you tore, you tore. So that's what we're holding now. Agav, in order to explain the brisa, we have to go into a little detail to come out. There is such a thing as the tivus l'palga, but that's not our subject. So back to the subject. What is the reason why the big day Shabbos case and the case of the two women, and also the first case about somebody had dropped his scarf and he asked his friend to pick it up, and he did, and he was tar. Still, the scarf becomes tamei. We don't have shot on all those things yet. The ode, and now the kasha has kasha number two. The first question was, So we don't have any shot yet. We tried. Maybe it's because you have to know what you're guarding. No, you don't have to know what you're guarding. So another proof that's the whole going to prove that you don't have to know what you're guarding. Even if, as long as you were guarding it, even though you don't know what it was, you made a mistake, it's still not a concern. And this, we'll see the whole story over here, a very nice story. Mosiv Rabba Barabu. Rabba Barabu asked the kasha.
Mosiv means what?
Mosiv means he asked. Picture Rabba Barabu. He's going to prove that there's no issue of not knowing what you're guarding. Maisa be'isha acha shabos l'tei b'shmo v'amalo Rebbe v'gezeh rakte b'tara v'lo believe l'shom b'tara. A woman came to Rebbe Shmuel and she had a question about tumah b'tara. She said, I wove this beged, this garment b'tara, but I wasn't dafka conscious at the time to make sure that I'm taught, that everything's taught. Means I know the facts, I'm thinking back, and everything was good, but I wasn't conscious at the time. I know that I was taught, and everything, no tumah came in contact with it, but I wasn't conscious at the time. Is that a problem? And the halach is that is a problem, that you have to know that you have to guard it, not that you happen to know later on I was taught. And Rabbi Shmuel interrogated her to find out if there might have been some problem. From all the questions that he asked her, it came out that there was a problem. Amalo, she said, Rebbe, Nida Mashcha Imi B'Cheva, that my friend, Nida, she was a Nida, and she did pull one of the ropes over there. And Rashi says it's like the clay riga, part of the loom that had to be pulled. She did pull it with me. And Rashi explains that Nida has the possibility, has the severity that when she moves something, it becomes tummy. That's called tumas hesed. Even though she didn't touch it, but if she moved it, moved the whole thing, also became tummy. So here the loom was moved, or maybe moved by the nida that helped her. And if the garment that was on the loom was moved by the nida, it also becomes tummy. So Bishmal said the garment is tummy. If she would have been conscious about doing it Patara, you would have realized that when the nida came, you would tell her to stay away. But since at the time you weren't conscious, now you're thinking back, so you forgot about that point. So Yishmael was saying that it is tummy, and he showed to her why it was tummy. Rabbi Shmuel said, see how great the words of the sages, that they said that only if you had in mind, you were conscious about guarding it, then it's Torah, but if you didn't have in mind, you weren't conscious about guarding it, then it's tummy. Why? Because people don't realize what they're doing, and like you see the story over here, that she wasn't conscious, and therefore she didn't realize that the nida had come and pulled the loom, or maybe pulled the loom in a way that it might have affected the garment. Another story. Shuv Maisa. Same thing, similar case. She had a mappa, some kind of a cloth, a tablecloth that she wove it Tara, but at the time it wasn't conscious. Again, the same point. That halach is that only believable l'shamra is Torah. You have to be conscious that you're doing it Tara. And she said I wasn't conscious, but afterwards I was thinking back, and no reason that I see that I should be tummy. Again, Rabbi Shmuel interrogated her. She realized that there was a thread, one of the threads that had snapped before she started weaving. It wasn't a beged yet. The thread alone is not makabel tumah. Only once it becomes a beged, Rashi says at least 3 asbos. It has to be a certain size garment. So she had a thread that snapped before she started the whole thing, and she tied it. And in order to tie it, she put it into her mouth, like to make the ends of the threads stiff, thicker, whatever. And then she tied it, and she forgot about it, and she didn't realize that happened. What's so terrible? The truth is that we would say, what's so terrible? That even though she was a tummy at that time, later on when she actually started weaving it, then she became Torah. But at the time, she had put the thread into her mouth, and she was a nida at that time. So the rope, the saliva, if it's still on the beged, if it's still there, if it's still moist, after she made it into a beged, then it's going to be matami the beged. It's true. While it was a thread, the rope, the saliva, even if it's tummy saliva, it's not going to be matami the thread because it's not vulnerable to tumah. It's not a beged. But once it was made into a beged, 3 by 3, that's both. Then and if it's still moist, if it's still ilach, so then it would be matami the beged. So Bishmal said, you see, there's a problem. If you would have been conscious, you would have realized that. You would have made sure that it's not going to have any killing. Makes it a beged. Makes it a beged. Then it's vulnerable to Torah. So Rabbi Shmuel again said the same thing. Rabbi Shmuel come belibo l'shomro Torah and belibo l'shomro tameh. That's the end of the brisa. That he had 2 stories about Rabbi Shmuel. That 2 women came, 2 different stories, and they thought that Lamaisa, they think back and nothing was tameh. And Rabbi Shmuel said, no, think more. And they, after all the interrogations, it came out that there was a tumor problem. That's the end of the brayso, and that's supposed to be a kasha, what we said before, and it's not clear what the kasha is. The Gemara before, again, the stories we're going, let's say, on the second and third story about the big day Shabbos, big day Chol, or the story about the two women who switched garments, and it said that it's tummy. You're trying to figure out why. The Gemara said maybe you have to know what you're guarding, and the Gemara first proved that it's not true because of the brayso that says about the wine and the shemen that you don't have to know what you're guarding; it's still tar. And this is supposed to be a second kasha. This is supposed to be a va'od, and it's not clear what the va'od. What do you see here? We're not talking about anything about one thing. Think you're guarding one thing, you think you're guarding something else. Not so clear what the Gemara means. There is a chazanish. They bring down a chazanish that says of Pshat in the Gemara that the whole idea of knowing what you're guarding and you didn't know what you're guarding would be like a low plug, like without any sense. It would be like a low plug. They wanted to make a takana that you have to guard it, and even though it doesn't make any sense, there's no real reason that it should make a difference if you know what you're guarding or not, as long as you're guarding it. But that would have been like a gzera. They made a gzera without any reason. The reason is, of course, to be careful, but they made it ready. No. You have to. But the Gemara proves from this story what the world wants to prove is that Rabbi Shmuel didn't just say, "I'm sorry, Mrs. It's tummy." If he didn't have in mind it's tummy without any reason, he interrogated to find that there was a reason, there was tumah. He didn't just say that chok v'lo yavor, that's the way it is. That if he didn't have in mind it's tummy. He said that has to make sense. He was machriach in order to show that it makes sense that there is a chash of tumah over here. So if there's a chash, if it has to make sense, it's not just a chok v'lo yavor. It has to make sense. So then, before by the knowing if it's a Shabbos garment or a weekday garment, it doesn't make any sense. So therefore, the Gemara goes back to the kasha: why in the world should it be tummy? That's what the Gemara wants. The Gemara brought down from this story to say that it's only going to become tummy if there's a reasonable sense. It can't just be that it's a chok. So that's what the Gemara is looking for. What's the pshat in all these three stories? Why should they be tummy? And now we finally get to the answer. So the Gemara goes sort of backwards. First, it's going to say the third case to make sense over there. Then the second case. Then it's going to get to the first case. So again, the third case was the two women that switched their garments to the base of merchats, and both of them were really Torah, and then we say the garment is still tummy. So the Gemara says, second wide line. It's true. Both of these women, the Maisa, they were Torah. They're both Chaverot, and both of them were Torah, and they really, the beggar didn't become tummy. But the reason why we are choshesh that it's tummy is because when she found out, Rachel found out that she really got Leah's garment. If she didn't find out, it wouldn't be a problem. It's not because she found out. When she found out, she doesn't know who Leah is. She doesn't know. She looks at the garment. She says, after 10 minutes, she says, "This is not mine." From then on, when she realizes that it's not her, she says, "I don't know whose it is. The woman that I got it from, the woman that I switched it from, and maybe she's tummy." So she herself now is not interested. She's not concerned in washing it anymore, even though she does guard things that are Torah. But she thinks this thing might be tummy, so she doesn't pay attention to it. Why should I pay attention to it? It's tummy anyway. Make sense? This far makes sense. So the reason why it's tummy, it's true. If she would be guarding it, she'd be able to guard it, even if she thought that it's this and it's that. But the fact that she found out that it's somebody else's garment, she stops guarding it because she doesn't know. Maybe it's tummy already. Something like that. Something that you think that might be tummy. So why should I continue guarding it? So therefore, that's the reason why it's tummy. And both women, each woman thinks, I don't know where I got it from. So maybe the other one is tummy. So they stop guarding it.
So there's an approved for the second case.
It explains the third case. It explains the third case.
Oh, yeah, the two.
Now the second case was if you understand about the Shabbos clothing and the weekday clothing. What's the difference if it was Shabbos clothing, weekday clothing? So the Gemara says also the same idea. That so for some reason people are more makbid on Shabbos. Not only to be nicer clothing, clean and nice and more chashuv clothing, more quality. Also they want that it should make sure that they're makbid more that it should be Torah. We don't have the concept nowadays. We're not into all that. We don't know Torah. But people were more makbid on the Shabbos clothing that it should be Torah. So the guarding that people used to do, they used to do a high level, high security. When they would watch things for Shabbos, they wanted the Shabbos clothing should be very Torah. In the middle of the week, he took by mistake his Shabbos clothing, and then he realized that it's a Shabbos clothing. If he wouldn't have realized, then everything would be good. But he did realize. He realized. Once he realizes, he says, "Hey, this is my Shabbos clothing, and I'm only guarding it now for the past 10 minutes that I've been wearing it. I was only guarding it on the level of a weekday. It wasn't on a high security alert. So I'm not going to wear this Tamei. He thinks that it might be on a low level of security. He's not going to wear this on Shabbos anymore. So then he stops guarding it. Once he stops guarding it, it might become Tamei even on a weekday level because he's not guarding it at all. Make sense? Again, this one is good. Good enough. Okay. If anybody wants to repeat, so just
What's the extra, why the extra Kedusha on Shabbos?
not kedusha, Tara. They're more makbid that it should be Torah. Why? That was their minhag. No such halacha. But there's a minhag that people they're I don't know, minhag of Shabbos. That we do other things for Shabbos also. So on Shabbos they make sure that
You take your Shabbos food better than your weekday.
That's not Tahara.
No, I'm just saying, so.
yeah, but this is interesting that they and the weekday also they want it to be Torah, but on Shabbos they're extra careful and very interesting. So
They asked
therefore,
Mordechai the others, that's how whether it's good to go to the mikveh on Shabbos morning,
different,
and he said yes.
different,
But that's to do with Tahara.
different subject. Okay, but that would be the tefillah says applies to the Shabbat
Yeah,
to the weekday
I
also.
wonder if it meant that.
Okay, maybe, but the Hirak Gemara says that people are more makbid on the Shabbos level of Tara, and when he found out the middle of the week I'm wearing my Shabbos suit, I messed it up. So he's going to put this into the mikveh before wears it on Shabbos, and therefore he stops watching it even on a weekday level. It gets not only is not a Shabbos level. Once he thinks that this is a Shabbos clothing, I'm not going to wear this on Shabbos, and a weekday I'm not going to wear it on weekday either because it's Shabbos, my Shabbos suit. So he's going to put it into the mikveh. So he turns off his consciousness. He's not anymore guarding it at all, and that's why it's tummy. So we answered already the third case and then the second case. The first case we still didn't figure out. The first case was that one chav he dropped it and he asked, please pick it up, and he picked it up and he gave it to him. So it's tummy. Why is it tummy? He asked him afterwards, are you Torah? You're Torah.
How about the floor? Is the floor matame?
No. It's
Misafek, I'm not meaning.
What?
Misafeka, לא מוודאות. I mean.
the floor is not tummy. The floor is not
Right,
tummy.
I mean,
A
the
floor
floor
can't be
of Eretz Zar, let's just say,
A floor, it's no difference if it's the floor or it's going to irritate the. It's not.
the ground.
It's not a couple times. I mean, there it's a straw. You want to keep it as straw. There it's a straw. So now the case that the first case also, you could say that the person who picked it up, he doesn't know who the owner is. The owner tells him, please pick it up. And the person who's picking up is a chaver, he's a makbid on tumah v'tara, but he doesn't know who the owner is. So that part might fit well. That even though he's could guard it, but he doesn't guard it because maybe it's tummy.
But the person is asking to pick it up, surely he knows that's the owner, or it's his interest that he should pick it up.
Again,
They're both chaver.
yes, but the person who picked it up, he doesn't know who the owner is. The owner asked him, please pick it up. I don't know who you are.
He doesn't know you.
I mean, I see you, but I don't know who you are. I don't know if you have
They knew each other's madrega.
So it seems not. So, or let's say, so the one who picked it up, he didn't guard it because he doesn't know who the owner. Maybe it's tummy anyway.
Second that he picked it up.
So he's not watching it.
1 second.
He's not watching it. Maybe it became tummy. Maybe it touched the sheriff. He didn't pay attention to it. So all the three cases have a common denominator that if you think that it's tummy, if you think it might be tummy, so you don't guard it. That's the same. That's the golden thread from all three cases. That if you think that it might be tummy, like the two women, maybe the other woman is tummy, or the case of the Shabbos, that this is maybe I already messed it up because I wore it in the weekday. I wasn't watching it for the past 10 minutes. And the third case, the first case also, the blue case, about asking somebody to pick it up, the person who picks it up, he doesn't know who the owner is. Maybe it's tummy, so it isn't guarded. That the Gemara does have a possibility, but the Gemara is asking, the rest of the Gemara is going to talk about, but the owner who's right there, why he's watching it, and obviously the person he asked, he does know the other person is Torah, or else he wouldn't have asked him to pick it up. So the owner who asked the passerby to pick it up, he knows that he's Torah. So and he's watching it. The owner is watching it. Why is that not good enough? That's the rest of the Gemara now. I'll stick in, even though the person who picked it up is not watching it because he doesn't know who the owner is, but never do shima, let the owner watch it while it's being picked up by the one who's picking it up. That when you're not holding it, somebody else is holding it, so your shmira is not a good shmira. You can't watch something in somebody else's hand, you can watch something in your own hand. So the owner, even though he sees that the chaver is picking it up, we can't say that he's watching it. Why can't it work? Because because you can't be conscious enough about something that somebody else is holding. You can be conscious about something that you're holding, not about something else is holding. Maybe there's a different reason. Whatever the reason is, this is the new cloud that comes out. Besides the first cloud that came out, that if you think it might be tummy, you're not going to watch it. Or it's not going to be, if you don't think it's on the level that you want it to be, you don't watch it at all. Also, if something is being in somebody else's hand, you can't watch it. You can't watch something. You can't guard something in the hand of somebody else. The more the kasha is not so below. But Tanya, Apal Pete shaved like Mehan Yosem in Miltaros of Tohoros. The Mamalahem, Lahu, Nia, Wacharichem, Kimishan Islam, and Mehan Taros with Mace. This used to be a brisa that if somebody had Tohor food, whatever it might be, barrels of wine, Rashi says, and it's in the hands of the workers, Hamar Bapol, of the truck drivers and the workers. And Rashi thinks that in the beginning, the Gemara thinks that these people are tamei. These people are tamei, but as long as they don't touch the wine, it's okay. It's in a barrel in a way that they're not making it tamei. So if they're carrying the barrels of wine, as long as they think that he's there, so they're not gonna make it tamei. Even if he went away far, a mil far away, and he can't see them. Taros of Toros, because the one's going to say soon that they don't know that he went so far. They think he might be able to check up on them, so they're scared. They're not going to be tamei, not going to make metame. But if he says, you go ahead and I'm going to catch up with you, so then they're not scared of him because he's not coming along. Once he doesn't see them anymore, so then they're tamei because maybe they touched him. And what does the Gemara want from all this? The Gemara thinks that in the ratio where it says that it's Torah, or on the Sefer that it's Torah, and as long as he sees them, they're holding it and he's watching it. The Gemara thinks that they're not the one that are watching it, they're tamei, the tamei people. And if they're going to touch it, it's not going to become tamei. But he's watching them. So you see that you can watch something in the hands of somebody else. And you said in the bottom, you just said that you can't watch something. Rashi takes out these couple of words. The case is that not that he's watching it, he made them Torah. Means that a person sometimes when he wants workers to make something Torah, he does the whole process to make sure that they're Torah. He makes sure they go to the mikvah and they're Torah, and now he knows that there's no Tumah problem. They're not Tameh. And they're the ones who are watching it, even though they're his workers, but they became Torah and they're watching it, not that they're watching it. But the Gemara says
chaver, or they're on the level of
they're not chaverim, but Matar Chamor B'Po'olo. They're Amoyor. But he made them Torah. He says, come and go to the mikvah, whatever he has to wait. They have shemesh, and then he says, next day we're going to work. So he makes sure that they're Torah. So now they're the ones who are watching it. Jewish Amayoris, and they're the workers, and he makes sure that they're Torah. He has a mikvah before they start working. Everyone goes to the mikvah, and then they wait to have shemesh, whatever they have to have, and then they come to work. So he knows that they're Torah. They're the ones that are watching it. He can't watch it in their hands. They're watching it. So then the question is, if they're Torah, so what's the problem? In the Sefer, when they don't see him anymore, what's the problem? Yochi Sefer Nami. In the Sefer also, even if they're not scared of him,
they guard because then he's not in their.
But they're Torah anyway.
Yes, but from that point on, their guard is less.
But they're still Torah.
But who says it's going to last? So were the two chaverim, but then the other, all the chaverim were Torah.
That's because they're not conscious of watching it, and you say that's also
I'm
they're not watching it.
They drop their guard because they're not worried about that.
Okay, so maybe the Gemara says more or less what you're saying. That even though they're Torah, they can't make it Torah if they want. Tell me if they want to, because they're Torah people. What can they do? But you're right in a sense. But the Gemara says that they're not conscious, they're not makbid that someone else shouldn't touch it. It means that they are his friends come along. The Amoritz, his friends come along, and they were not in the mikvah over there, so they might touch it, and he doesn't mind that they touch it. The chaver, like you're saying, that you're watching it, other things shouldn't come in. Other problems, outside problems shouldn't affect it. So even though they're Torah, but they're not watching it, they have become coming from the outside.
They don't know enough. They don't understand that.
Yes, they're not. Yachi in the Resha that he, even if he went away, this rest of the Gemara seems to be the simple pshat even without our Gemara, and maybe the Yachi is a little difficult over here. But the Gemara explains what's the difference if he says if they don't know that the Resha he said what was the Resha that he went away from them, but he didn't tell them I'm going away. He didn't say officially. So they're scared they're scared that he's going to come. That's what the Gemara explains over here. There is a way, a shortcut. They're scared of that. They won't see how he's coming back. He started going, but they know he might make some kind of a detour and come back and a surprise inspection. So therefore, they're conscious. They're not going to let anybody touch it. But Sefer Nami, back to the Sefer, when he says, "I'll be back. I'll be up. I'll catch up to you in 15 minutes." Since he told them, "Go and I'll catch up." They rely that it's not going to be here for the next 15 minutes, and then they don't care if somebody comes. So the Gemara came out just to get the Yisodus to the Gemara. The first we'll continue still. We have time to go into the next parak, the Mishnah at least. But halachas first the Gemara proves from our Mishnah that Funch Nasal Teres HaKodesh Kodesh Damu, and that is a good. The Gemara does bring a raya from Yochanan and Good that his things were considered tamei like chatas, but not the kodesh, because chutz nas al teres kodesh kodesh dami. There are two other opinions in the brisa. That one said that's kechulin, while Lezer Basadi said it's like truma, and Amish said that's like kodesh. The next subject was three mamorim. All of them have the same yesod, but the first one has even another yesod, two yesodas. The yesod of all these cases is that even though you're tahor, if you think that the item you're watching might be tamei, you don't guard it, because anyway, like maybe it's tamei anyways. Why should I guard it for? So in all these three cases, you have that concept over here. The first case would be that one who picked it up doesn't know who the owner, so maybe this thing is tamei anyway. Why should I watch it? Second case is that once it was big day, he found out that it was big day Shabbos, one of the weekday. He's not going to wear it for Shabbos anymore because it wasn't on a high security level, and therefore he's not going to wear it for Shabbos, and therefore he doesn't guard it at all, and therefore he's not might have even become tamei even on a weekday level. And the third case, the two women that each one finds that they're wearing somebody else's clothing. They don't know if the other person is Torah or Tameh, might be Tameh. Since the other person might be Tameh, anyway, the garment might be Tameh, why should I guard it? That's the golden thread through all three cases. The Gemara says a problem in the first case, that even though the person who picked it up is not washing it, but you who gave it to him, that you know that the other person is Torah, why can you not guard it in his hands? And that the Gemara says, so you can't guard something in somebody else's hands. That's how the Gemara comes out. And the Brisa that said a number of days about the Paulim, all that's talking about that they're the ones who are guarding it, not you. You're not guarding it. You can't guard that. The Gemara comes out. You can't guard something in somebody else's hands. Agav, in the middle, the Gemara thought that they might entertain the possibility that you can't guard something. It's a good guarding only if you know what it is. But if you made a mistake, barley, wheat, or wine and oil and all these things, the Gemara thought that maybe that also is going to be a not guarding, like a chok. You have to know what you're guarding, but the more disproves that it's not true, that even if Yain within Hashem doesn't make a difference, it is a good guarding. So there's no such halacha. There is no such thing. But as far as the other points we said, they are true, that if the person has a reason why he thinks it might be tamei, he doesn't guard it at all. And also at the bottom you showed that you can't guard something in the hands of somebody else. If that's all good, we go on to the next paragraph. Everyone's happy? This is going to be a list of things that they gave chumras to kachin more than truma. Truma means truma, right? And kachin means karbanis. It's a higher level. We had the Mishnah before. You have chulin, meiser, truma, kodesh, and then even higher is paraduma. We're going to differences between chumra, kodesh, and truma. The chumras is all drabanan. L'chor is all drabanan. The chumras, and they talk about if it's drabanan or not. But these are chumras that kodesh has and truma doesn't have. They're going to be 11. There's going to be 11, and later on it's going to be divided. The first 6 and the last 5. We're going to go through the Mishnah to say what they are. Number 1, it's not numbered over here. I would have liked to number it, but I can't number with this mouse over here. So just keep count. The first one, maybe we'll just alternate to be able. Okay, if it helps anything. The first one is Matbilin Besoch Kalim the Truma Avalo Kodesh. That's the first one. That if could you be matbel 2 kalim, one inside the other. You want to put 2 kalim into the mikvah simultaneously, both of them are tamei. You take a glass, whatever, you put it into a bowl, and you put both of them into the mikvah. Is that good?
Yeah, I mean, as long as they're not touching each other.
They are touching each other.
Okay, but they're not sealed to each other.
So the truma, that's good. For chulin sholi, it's good even for truma. Matbil and kalim masol kalim and truma, but for kodesh not. If you want to make that a shvitor on the level of kodesh, you should be able to use it for karbanos, then it's not a good make. It's not good. Why not? We don't know anything yet. That's going to be the
It
good.
doesn't work for kodesh.
It doesn't work for kodesh. So you see the words. Matbil and kalim masol kalim the truma of a kodesh. That's the first halacha. Halacha number 2. Achorayim, the toch, or beisat svita, the truma v'lo kodesh. A kli has an outside, has an inside, has a handle. They're all considered separate kalim as far as kodesh truma goes. That if one became tamei, not necessarily does the other one become tamei. We have to see more details in the Gemara just to get their simple words. That the achorayim is the back and the inside, and beisat svita means the handle. If you have a handle for a cup or something like that, it's considered separate kalim. And if one became tamei, the other one doesn't become tamei. That's only as far as truma goes, but as far as kodesh, if any part of it became tamei, the whole thing becomes tamei. Next halacha, anose as a medris, nose as a truma, avalo as a kodesh. If you're holding a medris, Rashi gives an example. You're holding a shoe which is the tamei that became avatuma. You're holding in one hand the avatuma. Could you hold truma in the other hand? So it's avatuma. You became a rishon by holding it, let's say, but you're holding the truma in a kli that the truma is not going to be affected. You're not going to make the kli tameh. You're a rishon. You can't make the kli a sheni. Kli doesn't become a sheni. So the truma is safe. So you're allowed to do that. You're holding avatuma, a medris. You're holding a tameh shoe, which is a avatuma.
So you become he becomes a rishon.
Yeah, that's okay, but he still can hold truma. No, don't touch the truma. You make it into a sheni. But you have it in a kli that it's not going to be affected, so that's okay. But you can't hold kodesh at the same time. While you're holding the medris, you can't hold the kodesh, even if it's not l'chara, it's not getting affected. Still, you can't hold the kodesh. We'll see in the Gemara the reasons for all these things. The next one, big day.
Again, it's the kodesh is in a kli. It's not he's touching it directly.
Yeah, if you touch it, then even in the truma. If you touch it directly, then you.
It's in a kli, but there's a machmir.
There's some reason why you can't hold it at the same time. The next one, big day, ochli truma medus lakodesh. Just this chazor. We had in the last parak already that a person who's makbid like ochli truma, like we had there's a ben Yezer, but his things are considered tummy. As far as the kodesh people, his things are considered tummy.
Very good. Is this the fourth example?
That was the fourth one, yeah.
Oh, there's four. I thought there was only three.
I'm trying to highlight it on the screen so you can see what's what. The next one, lo kemidas hakodesh midas hatruma, she v'kodesh matir managi v'matir v'achach kosher, v'truma kosher v'achach matir. All that is one, and it means that there's a chumrah of kodesh more than truma. By kodesh, we talk about is a beged. You have a beged. Nowadays, we don't put begadim into the mikvah. We don't put garments into the mikvah. We just put ourselves into the mikvah and kalim into the mikvah, because the goyish kalim, but we don't do anything else. But really, things that are tamei, so kalim become tamei. Not only food utensils, yes, and garments, yeah. So everything goes tamei. So here, there's a chumrah that by your kodesh, if you have a garment that has knots in it, has ribbons and knots, so you have to untie it. You have to untie the knots and also wipe it in order that it shouldn't have a liquid which might become a chatzitza, and then you put it into the mikvah. And then if you want to tie the ribbons. But by truma, you can even tie the ribbon first and then put it in the mikvah while it's knotted. It's not going to be considered a chatzitza. Rashi says on that, just to see any Rashi on that point. Umena gave him lachu, makbila v'chol zeh mishum l'dami l'chatzitza. That some liquids are considered a chatzitza. So even though this liquid will not be a chatzitza, for kodesh you have to dry it. You have to untie the knots and you have to dry it before you put it in the mikvah. By truma, there's no problem. You could even tie it before you put it into the mikvah. The next one. Kalim. On the Gemara and Betara. If you had a kli that was in the process of being made, it doesn't become vulnerable to tumah until it's completely made. And while it's still in the process, it's called the golme kalim, whatever. It's not considered a kli yet, so it's not vulnerable to tumah. So if you had a kli which was completed, from the time that it was completed, you were makbid that it shouldn't become tameh. By kodesh, you still have to put it into the mikvah first. It's still put it into the mikvah. By truma, you don't have to. Truma makes sense. That's how we understand. Why should it put it into the mikvah? From the time that it was vulnerable to tumah, you watch that it shouldn't become tameh. Why do I care what happened before? But for some reason, for kodesh, you have to put it into the mikvah to make sure that it's torn. The next one, akli mitzarek masha b'sochol l'kodesh avalo l'truma. If you have a kli that has a lot of, let's say, pieces of food, a bowl of peas. So as far as truma goes, if it be a bowl of peas of truma, so let's say a person touches one of the peas. Let's say he's a rishon. So that pea becomes a sheni, and the next one becomes a shlishi, and it's finished. The next pea doesn't become, because food of truma maximum become a shlishi, and avatuma makes a rishon, makes a sheni, makes a shlishi, it's finished. So 3 or 4 peas became tummy, but the rest of the bowl is considered torah. It doesn't get tummy. But by kodesh, we look at all the peas in the bowl. The kli mitzarek, the kli combines everything to be considered one unit, and all the peas are one unit. So if rishon is going to touch one pea, all the peas became a sheni. The next halacha, the next formula, Haravi Bakodesh, Pasal Bashlishi B'Truma. This is one famous one that we spoke about many times. That a kodesh is vulnerable to tumah till the level of Ravi, but Truma is only vulnerable to become a shlishi. It can't become tumah the level of Ravi. That's too little. It's not sensitive to such a small tumah. The next one, Uvetruma Nitmas Achas Miyadav. Just get it highlighted. The truma, if one of his hands became tamei, the other hand is still Torah. But by Kodesh, both of them become tamei, and also you have to put into the you have to put into the mikvah, not matbil. You have before by Kodesh matbil, by truma nota, and by Kodesh matbil. That the more is not emphasizing over here. But by Kodesh, if one of his hands become tamei, it doesn't mean a real tumah that's going to be katami the whole goof. It means only a tumah shadayim, something made the hands into a sheni. So one hand became a sheni, and the other one does not. But by Kodesh, if one hand became tamei, both hands become tamei. Shayad machal tamei eschavata b'kodesh avalo b'truma. It seems to be redundant. We'll see in the Gemara more. But the same, one hand can make the other one tamei. So that only applies to Kodesh, not by truma. And the next one, ochlin. If you have dry food over here means that it's always been dry, it never was wet, it never was mukshal kabul tuma, so the food is not susceptible to tuma, so it's not susceptible to tuma, so eat it. And even if your hands are tummy, yadayim misuvavos means yadayim tmeos. He has tummy hands and he's eating food of truma, which has never become susceptible to tuma because it never became wet. So what's the problem? You could eat it because even if you have tummy hands, you're not going to make the food tummy because it's not susceptible to tuma. But not by Kodesh. But Kodesh you can. For some reason, we don't know all these reasons. But for some reason, by Kodesh you can. And the last halacha on the next page, number 11.
Yeah, I'm up to the right numbers.
Okay. And the last one,
Onen.
Onen, or Mechusik Kippurim. Tzrichen tefillah l'kodesh avalol l'shuma. Onen is a person whose relative died, so he's not allowed to eat truma as long as he's an Onen. Then after he's an Onen, he's allowed to eat truma. Does he have to go to the mikveh afterwards? Why should he go to the mikveh? He's not tamei. So he's allowed to eat truma without going to the mikveh. Or if he's in Mechusik Kippurim, it means that he was a person who was a tamei on a high level that needed also a korban, a zav, a zava. So then he goes to the mikveh, and he's called it full yom. He still has to bring a korban. He's not allowed to eat kachin. He's not allowed to eat kachin or truma until he has. I'm sorry, truma he could eat, but he has to. He can't eat kachin until he brings his korban. He has to have harav shemesh in order to eat truma, and he has to have a korban in order to eat kachin. So after he brings his korban, does he have to go to the mikveh? Why should he go to the mikveh? He went to the mikveh yesterday already, and he brings his korban today. But notice, it didn't by Kodesh, you have to go to the mikveh even after the korban. And also has to have explanation why should all these things be. The Pasha says all these 11 things by Truma we understand that doesn't have this chumrah. The extra chumrah, all these chumras have to be explained. So these are the 11 chumras of Kodesh over Truma.
Truma is this.
Chomer b'kodesh maybe Truma. The whole Mishnah is one thing, like it says in the first lines. Chomer b'kodesh maybe Truma. These are a list of the chumras of Kodesh over Truma, and we have 11 chumras. To summarize the day, we're not going to go over the whole Mishnah again, but the beginning of the end of the paragraph before, the first halacha was the Ram Mishnah holds that Chun Shinasu al Taras Kodesh is Kodesh Damu. We find other Tanam that says it's either Ketrum or it's like Chulin. And then we had 3 halachas that all of them are saying the same thing, that if you think that the item might be Tameh, you don't watch it, even though you could watch it. You're a Torah, you're watching it, but you're not watching it because with your full consciousness, because maybe it's Tameh anyway. And that covers all the 3 examples. The first one has even extra chiddush that even if you're watching somebody who's in somebody else's hands, I'm guarding it. That's not considered a good shmira. And the halacha that came in between was that there's no such halacha that you have to know what you're guarding. Even if you don't know what you're guarding, you don't know if it's wine or oil or wheat, or you thought that it's wine, really it's oil, or wheat and barley. It doesn't make a difference. That the Gemara says is not a consideration. And then the next paragraph we have the 11 chumras of Kodesh over Truma, and then the Gemara is going to start discussing each one of them in the coming dapim. Yashikach, everybody. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Yashikach, thank you.